The air was thick with quiet tension, the kind that clings to expensive suits and well-manicured smiles. The mahogany table stretched long like a battlefield, and Gillian Marks sat near the end, half in shadow, half in memory. She tugged at the sleeve of her simple grey cardigan, feeling like a misplaced puzzle piece among polished edges and designer perfumes. Across from her, Tessa leaned back in her chair with the lazy entitlement of the favoured. Her crimson lipstick barely moved as she murmured something to Caleb, who smirked without taking his eyes off his phone. Avery, perched like a swan, checked her nails, feigning boredom. They all wore grief like a rented outfit, expensive, appropriate, and utterly detached. The lawyer, a sharp-jawed man with a lifetime of secrets etched into his forehead, cleared his throat and began. Per the wishes of George Marks, his estate shall be divided as follows. He read with precision, voice slicing through the room like a scalpel. To Tessa Marks, the Palm Springs estate, full access to the Marks Trust, and a 22% share in Marks Global Properties. Tessa didn't smile, but her eyes glinted. Gillian could almost hear the click of her teeth biting down victory. To Caleb Marks, the Greenwich apartment, $2.5 million in liquid assets, and 20% share in the family company. Caleb raised an eyebrow, nodded like he'd just earned a paycheck for existing. To Avery Marks, the Aspen Villa, 15% company share, and a platinum allowance from the Travel and Leisure Fund. Avery exhaled in satisfaction. She glanced toward Gillian, just briefly. That glance said everything. Then the room shifted. The lawyer paused, looked directly at Gillian. To my daughter, Gillian, he said, slower now, as though tasting the words for the first time. I leave the blue key in my desk drawer. She'll know what it opens. Silence. Then Tessa snorted. A key? She asked, full volume. Is that a metaphor or just a bad joke? Caleb chuckled under his breath. Must be a key to the broom closet. Avery didn't laugh. She just looked away like Gillian wasn't worth a reaction. Gillian's throat burned. Her heart pounded, not from disappointment, but from the weight of expectation shattered in front of her. Again, always the outlier, always the mistake. She said nothing, simply stood, reached across the table, and took the envelope with the key inside. A small, tarnished thing with a blue ribbon tied neatly around the bow. No folder, no deed, no instructions, just that. She nodded to the lawyer, then turned and walked out of the room. The laughter behind her echoed, but she didn't flinch. She gripped the key tighter in her hand. Whatever this was, it wasn't random. And her father, for all his distance, didn't do anything without a reason. Some doors aren't meant to be inherited. They're meant to be earned. The courthouse smelled of pine cleaner and paper, old justice and new battles. Alana Pierce walked through the metal detectors like a ghost who had finally returned to the land of the living. Black robe draped neatly over her forearm, heels echoing with authority across the marble floor. Her eyes scanned the familiar walls, calm and unreadable. Behind that calm, though, was a fire carefully banked, but never extinguished. The gold nameplate outside her courtroom gleamed. Judge Alana Pierce. Some still doubted she belonged here. Some whispered that she was too young, too unyielding, too something. She didn't care. She'd learned long ago how to silence the noise. Inside her chambers, she reviewed her morning docket. One case stood out. State versus Layla Carter. Female, 15, charged with theft of spiral notebook, pencils, a calculator. The file noted, resists authority, emotionally unstable, father requests incarceration. Alana stared at the words, her fingers tightening around the file. She'd read this girl 100 times before, in other names, other faces, but this one, Layla, felt like a reflection, a time machine. She leaned back, and the memories surfaced, uninvited. She was 15 again, trapped in a house where her voice was considered noise, her dreams a curse. Darnell Pierce didn't believe in schooling daughters. Girls with books end up alone. He'd spit. Useless. Mouthy. No man wants that. Every morning, her brothers would march out with backpacks. She'd be handed a broom. Her classroom became the kitchen. Her homework was obedient. But at night, when everyone slept, she'd sneak out the back door and slip into the high school where Miss Evelyn, the janitor with kind, watchful eyes, would unlock a supply closet. Inside, donated textbooks, outdated encyclopedias, forgotten SAT prep guides. Ms. Evelyn never said much, just nodded, handed her a flashlight, and locked the door behind her. By 17, Alana had passed her GED, working nights at Ray's Diner to pay the test fee. She'd come home smelling like grease, hiding her score report between her mattress and bed frame. The day she got the scholarship letter, full ride to Montgomery Community College, her hands shook. She read it 5 times in the shed behind their house. Nadine found the letter a week later while washing Alana's clothes. The slap came fast. "You think this world will protect you. You're just making life harder for yourself." Alana hadn't cried. Not then. Not when she packed her things in silence. Not when Darnell threw her suitcase into the yard. Not when Troy stood there, arms crossed, saying, "Don't come crawling back." And she hadn't cried walking away from that house, clutching her bag, and To Kill a Mockingbird pressed to her chest like armor. Back in the present, Alana snapped the file shut and stood. Her clerk tapped on the door. "Judge Pierce, you're needed in courtroom 3. She nodded once and followed, each step measured, composed. In courtroom 3, they brought Layla in wearing a too big hoodie, eyes rimmed with sleeplessness. She refused to make eye contact with anyone, except for a half-second when she met Alana's gaze, and something passed between them. Not recognition, not yet, but something close. A quiet understanding, like 2 survivors spotting the same old scar on each other. Alana took her seat. The courtroom hushed. "All rise," the bailiff called. The session began, but inside Alana, it had already started long ago. This wasn't just a case. It was a reckoning, a test of who she had become, and how far she'd come from the fire that nearly erased her. The gravel crunched under Gillian's shoes as she stepped out of the cab and stared up at the estate. The old mansion loomed against the cloudy sky, all iron gates and high windows, still cold and majestic, even in her father's absence. She hadn't been here in over a year, by choice. Every room in that house reminded her she didn't belong. But now she was here not as an outcast, but as someone with a key. She stepped inside with measured calm, her fingers wrapped tightly around the small brass. The housekeeper, Marla, recognized her with a nod, but said nothing. Gillian returned the silence and walked down the familiar hallway, past the grand dining room where she'd once been ignored at Christmas, past the marble staircase that still smelled faintly of lemon polish. She stopped outside the blue room, George's study, a place no one entered but him. The door creaked open with a whisper of old hinges. Everything was just as she remembered. Deep navy wallpaper, heavy velvet curtains, and the scent of pipe tobacco still lingering in the air like a ghost. She crossed the floor slowly and approached the massive mahogany desk. Her heart beat faster as she slid the key into the drawer. It turned smoothly. Click. Inside, beneath layers of neatly arranged pens and papers, was a plain white envelope and a silver flash drive. Gillian picked up the letter. Her name was written on the front, in her father's sharp, precise handwriting. She sat in the old leather chair, unfolded the paper, and began to read. "Gillian, if you're reading this, then I didn't get the chance to say this to your face, and for that, I'm sorry. I have made many mistakes, but none hurt more than how I handled you. You were the only one of my children who didn't chase my money, didn't fake smiles to secure their cut. You asked for nothing, and yet you gave your respect, your silence, your distance. You had every right to resent me, and instead you built a life on your own. I didn't keep you away because I didn't love you. I kept you away because I feared what this family would do to you. The greed in this house is a disease, but I failed to contain it. I let it grow, and now it's time someone sees what's beneath the gold veneer. The flash drive holds everything. Do what you think is right. I trust you. I've always trusted you, even when I didn't say it." Dad Gillian blinked away tears she didn't realize were forming. Her father, always silent and calculating, had left behind a final act not of wealth, but of trust. She plugged the flash drive into the laptop on the desk. The folders were neatly labeled. Tessa embezzlement, dozens of financial reports, internal audit files, and email chains. Tessa had been siphoning hundreds of thousands of dollars from client accounts into shell corporations registered under fake name. Caleb, laundering, offshore accounts, trace payments, photos of shady meetings in Dubai and South Africa, clear patterns of laundering through real estate investments using the family. Avery paternity, a lab report, DNA. George was not the father. Notes in George's handwriting never told her. Her mother swore it to the grave. I raised her anyway. Gillian's breath caught. Everything she thought she knew about her family, already shaky, crumbled. The blue key hadn't been an insult. It had been a torch. George hadn't left her nothing. He had left her everything: control, truth, leverage, responsibility. Her hand hovered over the laptop. She could bury this and walk away, or she could burn it all down. She sat back in the chair, letter on her lap, the faint ticking of the grandfather clock the only sound in the room. Whatever happened next, it would be her choice. And for the first time in her life, Gillian Marks had the power. The silence in Gillian's apartment had never felt this loud. She sat on the floor, knees pulled up to her chest, the flash drive beside her on the carpet, like it might detonate. On her laptop screen were copies of the files: Tessa's crimes, Caleb's laundering, Avery's hidden paternity. She hadn't touched her tea. It had gone cold an hour ago. "I don't know what to do," she finally whispered into the phone. Renee, on the other end, sighed heavily. "This isn't small, Jill. If what you're telling me is true, this could destroy the Marks family legacy, publicly, legally." "I know. And if even half of this gets out, they won't just be angry, they'll come after you. You're holding a loaded gun in a house full of people who don't blink at knives." Gillian stayed quiet. Renee's words weren't exaggeration. Her half-siblings weren't cartoon villains, but she'd seen what they were capable of when threatened: lies, manipulation, silencing people with power and money. "You need to ask yourself," Renee continued, "what do you want? Revenge, justice, or peace?" That question lingered long after Gillian hung up. The next day, Tessa called. "Hey, little sis," she said, the saccharine tone making Gillian's skin crawl. "We didn't really get a chance to talk at the will reading, and I feel awful about that." Gillian let her speak. Tessa went on about missing Dad, how she wanted them to have a bond, finally, and maybe go for lunch soon. Gillian, controlling her tone, responded softly, "Sure, let me know what works for you." But the moment she hung up, Gillian knew. Tessa suspected something. Her call wasn't about bonding, it was reconnaissance. That same afternoon, Gillian received a cryptic email from the estate lawyer, Mr. Hennings. Subject: immediate concerns. "Hi Gillian, Caleb reached out today about sealing any posthumous records or unreleased documents tied to George's estate. He claims it's about privacy. Just thought you should know. We haven't acted on anything. H." It was clear now. They were circling. Caleb, always the shark, could smell vulnerability. Gillian closed her laptop and stared out the window. Was this what George meant by being poisoned? That even the truth would become dangerous? She didn't expect Avery to show up at the school library where she worked. The younger half-sister had always been the quiet one, icy, polished, emotionally untouchable. But this Avery was different. Her eyes were red. Her hands trembled. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly. Gillian led her to the break room. "I found a letter in my mother's old things," Avery whispered. "It said George might not be my father, that he knew, that he raised me anyway." Gillian froze. Avery looked up with glassy eyes. "I never felt like I belonged, not even with them. But I thought, maybe I was just the sensitive one." Gillian's heart cracked open. She hadn't expected to feel empathy for Avery. But now here she was, another outsider in disguise. "I'm sorry," Gillian said gently. Avery nodded. "If you know anything, I'd want to know the truth." Gillian stayed up that night rereading her father's letter. It didn't just expose her siblings' secrets. It put her in the driver's seat. He had given her everything he'd never given in life: choice, trust, control. But with that came unbearable weight. What did she want? To destroy Tessa, who had humiliated her? To drag Caleb into the light and watch his empire crumble? Could she expose Avery's truth without breaking her completely? And deeper still, did she want to be a Marks at all? That name, that world, had always stood for exclusion, betrayal, and pain. She stood in the mirror and studied herself. Was she still that awkward teenager in a borrowed dress? Or was she someone else now? Someone who could stand in a storm and not flinch? Renee came over 2 days later with her laptop and a bottle of red wine. "You've got 3 paths," she said, pulling up legal files. 1, you walk away, delete the drive, and stay out of the fire. 2, you go full legal and leak everything. Public scandal, lawsuits, scorched earth. 3, you get smart. Use what you have. Choose who you want to be. Meaning you don't need to burn the house down to own the land. You decide who you want to spare, who deserves a second chance, and who needs to fall. Gillian stared at her. "I can't become like them." "Then don't. Be better. Be strategic. You're holding truth. That's more powerful than any fortune." For the first time in her life, Gillian didn't feel like the girl outside the gates. She felt like someone holding the keys. But the cost of that power, the emotional toll, was cutting deep. She thought about her mother, Rachel, who had raised her on dignity and simplicity. What would she do with this kind of weapon? Probably nothing. But Gillian wasn't just her mother's daughter anymore. She was Gior. The courtroom was tense, not just with silence, but with the heavy, invisible weight of eyes judging, waiting, doubting. Alana sat poised behind the bench, her robe crisp, hands folded. Across the aisle, Troy adjusted his tie, lips curled into the same smug, Sunday morning smile he wore in church. His lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we would like to call Mr. Troy Pierce to the stand." Alana's fingers twitched under the bench. She gave a single nod. Troy took the stand like a man accepting an award, calm, calculated. His voice oozed charisma. "I'm not here to fight with my sister," he began, hands folded. "I'm here because I love my daughter and I want her to have a chance. But Judge Pierce, she's had issues with our family for a long time. She's held a grudge since she left home." Gasps in the gallery. Alana didn't flinch. Troy's lawyer handed him a printed letter. "Can you tell us what this is?" Troy nodded, feigning reluctance. "It's a letter she wrote to a college therapist about feeling angry, broken, afraid of men. She's been in therapy most of her life. I worry her judgment might be clouded." Alana's composure wavered, only slightly. Her breath hitched. He continued, voice softer now. "She's done well for herself, but that doesn't mean she's unbiased. She's using this courtroom to play out her childhood wounds." Silence. Then Alana rose. Her heels echoed as she stepped down from the bench, holding a sealed manila folder. She walked slowly toward the center of the courtroom. Her voice, when it came, was calm, but lined with steel. "I'd like to submit new evidence for the court record," she said. The judge presiding in her place nodded. Alana opened the folder. First, photographs, taken 2 weeks ago. Bruises on Layla's arms and back, documented by a licensed social worker. She handed them over. Second, a voicemail. Layla's mother, Melissa Carter. She left it 2 nights before she disappeared. In it, she pleads for help. Says Troy threatened her for trying to enroll Layla back in school. Alana pressed play. The courtroom listened as a woman's trembling voice filled the air. "Please, he's going to hurt her. He already has. If something happens to me, don't let him near my daughter." Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Alana continued. "Melissa's location is still unknown. There's an active missing persons report." She opened a second envelope. And finally, Exhibit C, a sealed file from Alabama's family court archives. Troy Pierce was charged with domestic battery in 2010. His then-wife filed a protective order. The charges were reduced through a plea deal, but the record was never expunged. Troy jolted upright. "Objection! That's not admissible." "She's lying!" he shouted. "She's digging up things that have nothing to do with my daughter." Alana turned to him. "It has everything to do with your daughter," she said, voice rising. "Because this is not just a case about custody. This is a case about a man hiding behind religion and charm while breaking every girl in his reach." She turned back to the court. "And yes," she said, louder now, "Troy Pierce is my brother, and that is exactly why I know what he's capable of." A gasp rolled through the room. "When I was 14, he helped my father burn my books in our backyard. When I got my college acceptance letter, he tore it up before I ever read it. When I cried, he hit me." Her voice cracked, but she didn't look away. "I stayed silent for years because I thought surviving was enough. But watching Layla, bruised, terrified, trying to disappear just to escape him, I knew silence wasn't survival. It was complicity." The room fell still. She looked directly at the judge. "I'm not here to settle old family scores. I'm here to protect a child, one who deserves better than what I had." The judge nodded solemnly. "The court rules in favor of Layla Carter. Custody is denied to Mr. Pierce. Layla will be placed in a specialized foster program that prioritizes educational support and trauma counseling." As Alana returned to her seat, a deputy stepped toward Troy. "Mr. Troy Pierce, you are hereby under arrest for child abuse, witness intimidation, and obstruction of justice." Troy's expression twisted in shock as the cuffs clicked over his wrists. He looked at Alana, seething. "You think you've won?" he spat. Alana met his eyes, calm now. "No," she said. "I think Layla just did." Alana stepped through the courthouse doors, sunlight pouring onto the concrete like a spotlight. A crowd had gathered. Some clapped, holding signs that read, "Protect our girls," and "Justice for Layla." Others shouted insults, "Family traitor," and "feminist trash." But she didn't flinch. She walked forward, head high, each step deliberate, each breath measured. The same girl who once stood helpless by a bonfire now walked through fire of a different kind and didn't burn. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw a familiar figure near the edge of the crowd, her mother. Nadine stood still, arms folded, the posture of old habit, but her eyes met Alana's. And then, for the first time in years, she stepped forward. "I'm sorry," Nadine said, voice trembling. "I didn't protect you, but I saw you protect her." Alana's throat tightened. For a moment, words felt too heavy, so she nodded and whispered, "That's enough." Back in her chambers that evening, the office was quiet. Golden light stretched across her desk. She saw it then. A folded piece of paper slipped between her files. Childlike handwriting in bright blue marker. It was a card. On the front, a drawing of a girl in a judge's robe, holding a gavel with stars around her head. Inside, it read, "Thank you for seeing me. One day, I'll wear the robe too. Love, Layla." Alana pressed the card to her chest, eyes closing. A knock came at the door. Miss Evelyn stood there, in her cardigan and walking cane, smiling softly. "You always did write your own endings," she said. Alana smiled, thought it was time to help others write theirs. They sat together, flipping through planning notes, sketching ideas in the same spiral notebook Alana had once used to copy legal terms by flashlight. "We'll call it the Phoenix Initiative," Alana said, tapping the page. "A place for girls who were told they couldn't, to learn that they can." Ms. Evelyn nodded, "Rising from ashes, baby, just like you." The first Saturday workshop was small, just 5 girls, each wary and quiet. But as hours passed, laughter filled the space. They read stories, wrote their own, debated current events, imagined futures no one else had painted for them. At the end, Alana reached into a worn leather bag and pulled out a weathered book, To Kill a Mockingbird, the edges still scorched, the pages soft from years of turning. She handed it to Layla. "This got me through when nothing else did," she said. "Now it's yours." Layla traced the burn marks with her fingers. "You kept it." "I almost lost it," Alana replied. "But I didn't, just like you." The girl smiled, small at first, then full. Alana looked around the room. 5 girls now, dozens soon. A legacy built not from survival alone, but from defiance, courage, and the fire that once tried to destroy her. She didn't just rise from ashes, she lit a path through them. The sun was warm on her skin as Gillian sat quietly on the old park bench near the elementary school. The laughter of children floated through the air like music, unburdened, free. She watched them sprint past, little legs flying, ponytails bouncing, backpacks thudding as they ran toward their future without fear. She smiled, for once, not a guarded smile, not a performance, but a real, soft curve of peace. A little girl with braids and scuffed sneakers broke away from the group and came running towards her, holding something behind her back. "Miss Marks," the girl beamed. "We made you this." She handed over a folded piece of bright yellow paper, messy with crayon drawings and stickers that barely stuck. Gillian opened it gently. Inside was a child's drawing, a big golden key next to a red heart. Her breath caught. For a moment, she didn't move, didn't speak. She just stared. The drawing wasn't polished, but it said everything. She ran her fingers over the crayon line. Not a vault key, not a revenge plan, not an inheritance or secret, just a key to something real. A quiet rush of warmth swelled in her chest. Not pride, not victory, something gentler, truer. The little girl tugged her sleeve. "Do you like it?" Gillian looked down at her and smiled, truly smiled. "I love it," she said, and she meant it. As the kids ran back to the playground, Gillian leaned back on the bench, holding the card against her heart. Her eyes lifted toward the sky. She had unlocked the one thing her father's empire never could offer. Her own worth, her own peace, her own ending. Fade out. Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe.